Good evening and welcome. I hope you've been enjoying the summit thus far. My name is Paula Brown and I am the CEO, or excuse me, Chief Operating Officer at the Center for African American Health. You know, tonight we are joined with a host of information being provided to us by Jill Addai, MSW and LSW of Lutheran Family Services to really shed some light on families grappling with this ever-changing normal, dealing with anxiety associated with confinement and remote learning, and is really here to lean in and help us to learn how to better connect with our children and our families during this unprecedented time. So I have the privilege of introducing our speaker this evening, and I'm going to turn this stage over to Jill. Jill, thank you.
All right. Thank you so much for that wonderful introduction, Paula. Hello, everyone. It's so great to meet you all. Thank you so much for taking the time to join our workshop tonight. Tonight we are going to be discussing parenting during COVID. I'm going to go ahead and share my screen so that we can get started on the presentation. All right. All right. So just a little bit about myself. I am a licensed social worker. I've spent the majority of my career working with vulnerable populations. My purpose pretty much as a social worker, I like to say that I see myself as a change agent, a culturally competent change agent. And you can find me in Colorado, reading a book, exploring and spending time with my partner and our children. So in terms of our presentation tonight, I will be using the word parenting throughout our presentation. However, I just want to give notice that the use of the word parenting throughout this presentation is just used for consistency and is really a blanket term to identify caregivers, right? Because we understand that, parents can be moms, dads, grandparents, aunts, uncles, and foster parents. So parent is just a blanket term to identify caregivers. And some ground rules before we start, it's very important for us to create a safe space, right? So in terms of this presentation, we really like for it to be an inclusive space. We ask that you have respect for yourself and others. It's definitely a non-judgmental space. Only talk when the other person is done talking. We definitely ask for confidentiality. So what happens here stays here. And there's no pressure to participate. So participate at your own comfort level. And then really just understanding that we're all here for a shared goal, and which is to learn about new ways and approaches with parenting during COVID. So the objectives of our workshop today is, as I was saying earlier, to provide new approaches to parenting during COVID, to provide normalcy to parents, and then also most importantly to promote resiliency. All right, so we like to do a quick check-in. So please feel free to share in the chat. Our check-in is, how are you feeling as a parent? So please feel free to share in the chat. Are you thriving at this moment? Are you feeling like you're just managing, you're hanging in there? Are you taking it day by day? Do you feel like you've lost hope, or are you feeling completely burnt out? So please feel free to share in the chat. And Karen, what are you seeing in the chat right now? What are most people saying?
I am seeing, Jill, let's see, lots of 4s and 3s right now.
Okay. So a lot of people are hanging in there and taking it day by day. I definitely can agree with that. Just definitely taking it one moment at a time. So thank you all for sharing. All right, so let's talk about how our cups are running over during this COVID time. So we're sharing the capacity cup. It's an illustration by the psychology mom. She discusses the coronavirus and how individuals have been feeling very overwhelmed. So, our cups are running over at this point in time with so much exhaustion, right? So much anxiety. A lot of people are feeling irritable, overwhelmed, and burnt out. So this is just a really good illustration to, help give a sense of how individuals are feeling right now during COVID. So I wanted to share some thoughts from parents regarding, their feelings and attitudes during this COVID period and how they've been able to adapt and what changes needed to be made in the household. So this is from Claire. She's a banker, and Claire stated that COVID has affected me in regards to having to depend on grandmothers on both ends, becoming daytime school facilitators, and not really having much control in school discipline. She explains that she's trying to explain to her son, trying to get him to understand that they have to have limited interactions with those outside of their family, specifically for the health of some family members who may be in high risk category. Dana, who's an adult education director, stated that as a mother of three, it's affected her work schedule and balancing home, virtual school, and remote work. She states that it has caused her to really think about the reality of stay-at-home moms and working for herself. So she stated that I have also been working longer hours, not feeling accomplished during the day due to supporting my kids with virtual learning. The positive is that I have been able to see my children literally grow and learn about their personality versus shuttling them around from home to school to aftercare or extracurricular activities, and then doing it all over again. So she stated that I have been able to take more moments for myself, for self-love and care, and relax even while working at home. Another parent, this individual is a single father, and he stated that he lost his job and for the first time had to apply for unemployment. He states that his son is unable to go to school in person, so he's doing virtual learning, and that really ends up messing up the availability that he has for work hours. A dental hygienist stated that our family is trying to manage our dynamic. Our family is trying to manage our dynamic, which has changed since her sister moved in the home. They definitely have a full house now. She stated that we get on each other's nerves, but we're all very supportive. She states that she's, feeling lucky that her sister has moved in due to the pandemic, because days when she's struggling with anxiety and feeling down, and just from the pressure of like raising her children, she's able to have someone to lean on and talk to about like her goals. And then Donna, who's also a social worker, stated that we're all teachers now, because I literally come home, make dinner if my parents haven't already made it, and have to spend an hour or more helping my children with homework. She stated that she needs her second high school diploma, because those A's that her children are earning are hers too. So, all those thoughts from the parents that I just shared really gets to the heart of, this roller coaster that we've all been on since COVID started last year. In this illustration, the Corona coaster, pretty much just detailing, how overwhelming parents have been feeling, dealing with the unknown, juggling homeschool and virtual learning, really trying to find a way to have work-life balance. So this illustration is just so perfect for how we're all feeling in times of COVID. All right, so let's get into the effects of COVID on parenting. So the onset of COVID really led to most parents scrambling to make necessary changes in order to meet new demands such as virtual learning and remote work. Many parents lost income due to lack of school and childcare, as well as the mass reduction in the workforce. And then also in terms of pregnant women and new parents really have struggling to find normalcy in this time. And then the lack of connection and support during and after pregnancy. We'll also discuss the added pressure of being a parent, a teacher, and in most cases, a friend to your child or children. And then really the dynamic of being a parent and also acting as your child's truancy officer, right? Making sure that they're, going to class on time and, turning in assignments on time. And then also really talk about the decline in mental health due to constant anxiety of what's to come. When it comes to parents' need during this time, from an employment aspect, it's very important that employers consider the new burden placed on parents and caregivers, especially since they're in the home trying to oversee their children's education. Employers should also prioritize a healthy work-life balance, right? Because we have to consider that remote work often leaves parents with managing, their work and also household needs simultaneously. I myself, I'm working from home and also helping my 12-year-old who just started 6th grade with virtual learning. So it definitely is a balancing act, trying to manage my work and home life. And then from an educational standpoint, we really need to address the concerns of parents with children in school and remote learning. We really have to address the concerns of exposure with in-person learning and the fears of children falling behind with virtual learning. And then also, we understand that parents are feeling concerned about, feeling inadequate in terms of providing homeschooling for their children, right? I mean, even as a master's educated, social worker, I can tell you that it's definitely a challenge, even trying to help my daughter out with, her own schoolwork. I can definitely attest that Google has, really been our best friend during this time period. So a lot of households are also struggling to provide their children with additional instruction and the resources needed. And then having the skills to manage the impact of coronavirus outbreak on their children's development and well-being. I can, as I was saying with my 12-year-old, I mean, I definitely can see how, the coronavirus outbreak and virtual learning has affected her. I mean, she is definitely an extrovert, right? She thrived in the school environment, and being home remote learning, I can definitely see, how that has affected her willingness to even do her schoolwork at times. So also we really want to address the skills that parents need to manage their own emotional wellness and assessing stereotypical gender roles in the home. So when we talk about assessing stereotypical gender roles in a home, we really have to address, the burden that is placed on, maybe mothers in the home who have to not only work from home, but are now really taking on the burden of, cooking, cleaning, laundry, all of those things. So we definitely really want to assess those gender roles and, find a way for parents to maybe, mitigate if they're feeling burnt out. So let's talk about the importance of normalizing our feelings during this time. We feel that it's really important to help parents understand that it's okay to ask for help, right? And, in the beginning of, virtual learning and, remote work, I can definitely understand how unmanageable that it was, and really learning how to ask for help from, maybe my daughter or even my partner, right? Not putting so much pressure on myself to, perform, but really learning that it's okay to ask for help. And then also really learning how to acknowledge our anxious feelings, right? A lot of us are wondering, like, when will it end? When will things get back to normal, especially as the vaccine rollout has begun? I think a lot of people are wondering, like, when will we ever get back to normalcy? And then, as I was saying earlier, feeling of always having to be on, right? Feeling like you always have to perform, whether it's at home or on the job. There's been so much added pressure. So that's really an important thing for us to talk about, is parents always feeling like they have to, be on their A game or feeling 100%. And then also talk about frontline workers' fear of infecting their families. Not many people are able to work from home, so a lot of frontline workers are still having to go to work, and then it just adds to the anxiety of coming home and infecting, their family members. And then really important, talking about pregnant women and new parents feeling robbed of the joys of parenting. And I really decided to do this workshop because I can definitely attest to a lot of these things that I'm talking about. I was pregnant during the onset of, COVID. And I can say that I feel so robbed of, all the normal things that pregnant women and new parents, are able to enjoy. My parents, for instance, have not been able to see my newborn, and she'll be 1 in April. So, not being able to have baby showers, just those normal things, having, one visitor coming to the hospital with you. So just really helping, pregnant women and new parents with their feelings of being robbed of the joys of parenting. So I wanted to take a break. Karen, is there anything in the chat that, are there any questions so far, or?
I don't see any new questions in the chat, and nor do I see any in the Q&A at the moment, Jill.
Sounds good. All right, so we're gonna get right into new approaches to parenting. So as a response to these unexpected changes, parents and caregivers have had to make significant changes to manage day-to-day life. Parents really had to make a decision in terms of, will my children stay in school if that's possible? With daycare closing, will I be able to, still work and take care of my children? So that really led to that reduction in the workforce, especially by, women or mothers. And then also parents are encouraged to complete a self-assessment to determine the changes needed in order to manage their new normal. So in terms of, completing a self-assessment, just determining, what your capacity is, for your day-to-day tasks, and seeing, I always say it's really important to try to delegate tasks in the home. So doing that self-assessment will definitely help parents to be able to manage, their day-to-day tasks. And then really important, really shifting from a system changes or lack thereof to individual changes, right? So when we talk about system changes, we really want to address how systems have affected us during this time of COVID, right? And the response or lack thereof in regards to policy changes, school closures and school reopening, not knowing when we're returning back to work. So a lot of people feel like, the systems that we deal with on an everyday basis have, let us down. So we really want to shift from that system change to individual changes, right? What do we have control of in our own lives to, make things better? So we will assess how those changes center or affect what we like to call in social work as a biopsychosocial aspect. So as I was saying, in terms of the system changes, right? What can we let go of that we have no control over, right? The what ifs, like when our schools opening back up, when our restaurants opening back up, really learning to let go of the unknown, when things will return back to normal. And then also, letting go of other people's behaviors and their attitudes, maybe regarding COVID or, people's attitudes and behaviors in your household. So really learning to let go of those things that we have no control over, and then looking at the things that we can control, right? So what can we control? We're able to control the information that we consume, maybe taking a break from the news sometimes. We are able to control how we spend our time. What are you devoting your time to? We're able to look after ourselves, right? Put in some self-care time. How do I respond to my, emotions? Am I responding in a healthy way, or the way I'm responding, more to my detriment? And then also taking sensible precautions, right? We all have to be responsible for each other during this COVID period. So, wearing your mask when you go out, really helps you in terms of, feeling like you're taking sensible precautions. And then sleeping, sleeping at a regular time, maybe getting your 8 hours of sleep so you can be energized when you wake up and not cranky, eating healthier foods, moving, just exercising. So in terms of the biopsychosocial aspect, we really want to focus on parents or caregivers as a whole, right? We understand that in order to, provide help to individuals, we really have to focus on that individual and everything that affects that individual. So when I'm working with, let's say, a homeless family, I'm not just looking at the housing piece, right? I'm not just worried about helping the individuals find housing, but I'm really more so concerned also about, their biological, their psychological aspect, the social aspect, their emotional aspect. So we really take a person-centered approach in looking at the individual as a whole. So I'm going to discuss about the biological assessment piece. So when we talk about the biological assessment piece, we really need to understand that it's important for us to assess the importance of parents' medical and mental health history to determine how that may affect them. So for example, COVID has had a positive and negative effect on the health risks of populations, such as pregnant women and older adults, right? So for instance, we can say that, pregnant women have been protected with, having to stay at home and, self-isolate from other individuals. And then on the other hand, when we look at older adults, that isolation piece really can lead to, loneliness. So we're trying to look at it from, all aspects of the positive and negatives of health effects of COVID. And then also really looking at our biological changes, which can be attributed to lack of sleep, substance use, unhealthy eating habits, things of that nature. So I feel that it's really important for us to place importance of the need for parents to, or caregivers to be able to see a primary care provider, take their prescribed medications, eating healthy, and regularly exercise. And so all of these can really help with the biological aspect of a person's whole being. And then really we talk about the psychological assessment. So when we talk about the psychological factors, we're referring to a person's thought process, right? And how that thought process influences their mental state and their behavior. So psychological factors can impact a person's physical well-being. So for example, parents have really had to assess their strengths and weaknesses as it relates to becoming educators, as I was mentioning earlier, without those necessary qualifications. And it really has led to a lot of parents feeling inadequate in terms of being able to meet their children's educational needs. So, as I was saying earlier, I mean, my husband and I are educated, but we still find it, challenging at times to help my daughter out with the schoolwork because we don't really have those educator qualifications. And then, some parents are turning to the use of substances. We know that substances have increased in households as a coping mechanism for some adults. So really, we need to help parents and caregivers engage in self-rewarding behaviors that do not lead to, addictive behaviors. And then the social aspect. So the social factor consists of the social and cultural environment surrounding a person, so including interpersonal relationships and their peer groups. So what we really need to consider is the impact of COVID on multi-generational households, right? So many families are dealing with, lack of boundaries in a household. For instance, like we live, in an apartment. So my husband is working from home, I'm working from home, and my daughter's doing schoolwork. So we really have to be careful in terms of, crossing each other's boundaries. And then also, giving each other the space to, work and, have my daughter, do her virtual learning. So a lot of boundaries are in play right now, and many families are in need of help in terms of, how to set healthy boundaries in the home. And then how COVID has challenged cultural family beliefs and rituals. So parents are really having to manage the complexities of like maintaining parental boundaries, as well as meeting the emotional needs of their children. And this is so important, right? Because not only are we parents right now, but a lot of children are stuck at home. Parents don't feel safe letting their children go out. So we really also have to, play the role of, a friend to our children sometimes and help meet those social emotional needs of our children. So also the importance of helping parents address their social and environmental factors and determine what is supportive versus what is harmful and stressful. And then lastly, in terms of the spiritual aspect of the biopsychosocial spiritual model, we really want to address the role of spirituality in our lives, right? Our parents affiliated with a spiritual community, and how does spirituality contribute to a parent's ability to hope, to find their motivation and their desires. And then also assess how spiritual needs are being met with the closing of places of worship. So we understand that the spiritual piece is a big factor in our lives. So how have parents been able to cope with closing down of churches or maybe places of worship? We touch on the self-care wheel in terms of helping to find balance. So as I was just saying, in terms of the spiritual piece, so maybe ways that parents can really help to find that balance in this time of COVID is, to meditate, or some parents or some caregivers like to engage in, not engage, but some parents like to do yoga, really taking time for self-reflection, going out into nature. And in terms of, the psychological piece, again, self-reflection is always important. Really utilizing a journal, right? I always talk about this, using a journal to write down your thoughts and your feelings and your emotions are all very important. So I just wanted to touch a little bit on the self-care wheel and those things that you can use to maintain a healthy life balance. So promoting resiliency during COVID. So resiliency is pretty much defined as the process of adapting well in the face of adversity, trauma, tragedy, threats, or significant sources of stress. So one parent that we spoke to stated, in terms of resiliency, she stated that I have been able to stay afloat during the pandemic by understanding that we are not alone. We all have daily struggles, but every day we wake up, we put on our capes, and we do what we need to do for our families. So really touching on that adapt piece, right? Learning to adapt in the face of COVID. So let's talk about our capacity jar, right? We all have a mental health jam jar, so to speak. So we really need to assess, like, what is your jar filled with? Is your jar filled with, mental ill health? Like, are you struggling right now? Are you feeling burnt out? Or is your jar filled with those things that can help you cope? So are you exercising? Do you have supportive friends and family members? Are you eating healthy? So we really need to assess whether or not our jar is filled with, vulnerabilities or stressors or coping strategies. So always, do a self-assessment of your mental health jar and what is filled with. So resilient people, we understand that they tend to maintain a more positive outlook and, cope with stress more effectively. So I think it's really important for parents and caregivers to understand that, you're never too old to learn behaviors that help you become more resilient, right? And then also being resilient can make a huge difference in terms of how you respond in stressful situations. So are you breaking down at the, thought of a stressful situation, or are you, finding coping strategies in terms of like, breathing when times get tough, or just, taking a second to, think things through before you respond. So that resiliency aspect can really make a huge difference in how you're able to respond to stressful situations. So we want to talk about ways to help parents and caregivers build resiliency, right? So really it's important, especially in this time, that find, what your purpose is and learn to live out that purpose, right? So it can be something as simple as maybe joining a new moms group, or finding maybe an online church or spiritual group to join. Also, the importance of believing in your abilities, right? Really helps to build your resilience. So you have to have confidence in your ability to cope with stressors in your life. Becoming more confident in your abilities really helps you respond and deal with a crisis. So reminding yourself, and then also reminding yourself of your strengths and your accomplishments. I do this a lot when I'm feeling stressed out, especially with work and maybe having some, deadlines that I need to meet. I always try to remind myself of the accomplishments that, I have, and, the skill set that I have, and why I am in the position that I'm in, right? They felt that I was, skillful enough to be a team lead. So that's why I'm in this position. So those same skills that, I used maybe in my past work, I can really hone in on those skills in this job. And then really always important to listen out for negative comments in your head. I always tell my clients the importance of immediately replacing negative thoughts with, positive thoughts. And I even work on this with my daughter. So, when you're feeling hopeless or when you're feeling down and out, if you feel that, today you've maybe failed as a parent, you didn't do, X, Y, and Z, instead of saying, I can't do this, I'm a bad mom, maybe you can turn those words into positive and say that, I can do this, or I am a great friend, I am a great mother or a partner, or I am good at my job. So really always practicing immediately replacing your negative thoughts with positive thoughts can make a huge difference. And then the importance of developing a strong social network. I know it can be hard and challenging in times of COVID, but it's always very important to have, someone to confide in. We're all social beings. So, find someone to confide in, having caring, supportive people around you can act as a protective factor during times of crisis, right? So while simply talking about a situation with a friend or a loved one won't make your troubles go away, it allows you to share your feelings, to get support, to receive feedback, and then helping you to come up with possible solutions to your problem. So sometimes we're thinking of things too deeply. So it may be good to just speak those things out and help, have your support system, help you come up with solutions to those problems. And then most importantly, learning to nurture yourself, right? I know we talk about self-care and it can seem so cliche at times, but just how important it is to nurture yourself, especially when you're feeling stressed. It can be so easy to neglect your own needs, right? It's so easy for me to, think about what I need to do for my 10-month-old and my 12-year-old and maintaining my household, that I can often neglect, eating breakfast. So it's really important to nurture yourselves, because I understand that if I'm not well and if mom is not feeling good, then, I'm not really able to take care of my family. So losing your appetite, ignoring exercise, and not getting enough sleep are all common reactions to stress, and are all common reactions to stress. So it's really important to focus on building your self-awareness skills, even when you're feeling troubled. Let's see. Okay, so skills and techniques to help with having a skills and techniques for success when working and learning from home together. And this is specifically for parents, right? So learning how to set reasonable expectations, learning how to utilize time management techniques. So I share a little bit in terms of time management, right? So just some things that, I've done myself that have really helped in my household. So really having time management is defined as a process of planning and exercising conscious control of your time spent on specific activities, ways to increase effectiveness, efficiency, and productivity. So really learning to create a daily routine, right? It helps everyone in the household stay on the same page. It doesn't have to be a strict schedule, right? Because we know that life happens and things change, but try to establish, regular times to eat, work, pray, and relax. Really learning to utilize different tools and techniques to manage and organize your day. So if you need to go out and get a planner, you need to go out and get a calendar, utilize a family-centered planner to help to hold each other accountable, right? A shared family calendar lets you know who, what, when, and where, right? And then also being able to understand how to rate your tasks from urgent to non-urgent, or from most important to least important. So it's not everything that deserves your time and your energy, right? So some things are more urgent than others. So, you know, you need to cook dinner for your family, or decide to do laundry. You can definitely weigh what's most urgent and non-urgent. And then being mindful of constant distractions and interruptions in our day-to-day, especially with, you know, our phones and social media and everything that's going on in the news. It's so easy to get distracted. So definitely being mindful of, you know, certain distractions in your day. And like I was saying, include breakfast and rest in your day, even if that's 5 minutes, 10 minutes, 20 minutes to yourself, to just take a breather from work and home life. It's really important to just incorporate those little breaks into your day-to-day. And time management techniques specifically to use for your children and families. So it's really important for parents and caregivers to learn to keep up with their children's school schedules. So understanding your child's schedule can help set them up for success, right? A lot of children have been thrust into, you know, remote learning, and they don't have the time management skills needed to be successful with remote learning. So as a parent or a caregiver, the responsibility really falls on us to help them learn good time management techniques. So provide them with a planner or agenda to help keep track of tasks. So I know for a fact, you know, in school, you're provided with an agenda, you know, the first week of school, and you're able to use that, you know, throughout the school year. So providing that same system for children in the home can really help set them up for success. And as we were saying, creating a daily routine. So again, this helps everyone in the house stay on the same page. Set aside quality time with your children. Although we're around each other all the time, try to set aside time just to enjoy each other's company. So we're not working, you know, we're not in remote learning, where we're finding time to you know, maybe play video games with your child if that's what they enjoy, playing board games, you know, just finding little things to bring enjoyment in each other's lives. And then an extra tip is teaching our children to advocate for themselves, right? Allowing them space to express their feelings around hectic school schedules, and teaching your middle or high schooler how to communicate with their teachers regarding their educational needs. So one thing I've done for my daughter is really helping her learn to advocate for herself by learning how to communicate with her teachers when she's feeling, you know, maybe stressed out with the amount of schoolwork that she has, or having her learn how to email her teachers, you know, and asking, you know, for extra help, or asking for office hours. So really just teaching your children how to advocate for themselves will really go a long way in terms of taking some stress off of you, in terms of having to manage their school schedules and their homework, and really placing some of that responsibility on them. And then conflict resolution techniques to use with your child or family. So conflict resolution, defined as the process by which two or more parties reach a peaceful resolution to a dispute. So really understanding the importance of effective communication and empathy when dealing with our children. It involves the use of social emotional skills needed to navigate difficult situations. So you really have to teach your children to recognize conflict early on, understand that, you know, everyone has a different point of view, right? No two people may not see something alike. So everyone has different point of view, and then finding common ways to resolve issues and conflicts. And then also, there should be an end goal when it comes to conflict resolution in the home, right, with your children, such as, you know, maybe setting a new curfew, rotating the schedule for playing video games among siblings, because we know how challenging that can be at times. And then also the amount of time that we allow our children to spend on social media. So find new ways to communicate with your children, right? So for my daughter, we have like a family chat. where we're able to communicate with each other. And then also one thing I do with my child is we leave, physical notes for each other. So we either share our concerns or our delights, right? So if my daughter has, accomplished something great in school, I'm able to write her a note, put it on her vanity so she can read it, maybe when she wakes up, just helping her to understand, how I'm proud of her, and just also sharing my concerns, right? If she does something that may frustrate me, or if I'm dealing with some internal things that are frustrating to me, it's really important for me to maybe write her a note, letting her understand that, it's not necessarily her causing the frustration, but it's just something that I'm dealing with. So really important to, find different ways to communicate and problem solve together. This is just an illustration in terms of conflict resolution skills. Really talking things out, right? And then also showing assertiveness, having mediation to resolve conflicts, really showing empathy, right? Putting yourself in another person's shoes, and then having active listening skills, right? So when, I'm talking to my daughter, I'm giving her eye contact. I am, maybe nodding my head to help her understand that, yes, I hear you, maybe reframing or rephrasing something like, oh, what I hear you saying is you're frustrated with, the amount of schoolwork that you have. So all of those things. Okay, so in terms of stress management, we really have to acknowledge our stressors and tensions and really learn to check in with ourselves. And then also the importance of building in techniques to alleviate stress. So it's really important to understand what triggers us in our lives. So for example, if you're having trouble managing work and your child's virtual learning, think about the positive changes that you need to adapt, right? What can you do differently to help you get through, virtual learning and remote work? And then perhaps you need to take breaks, maybe communicating with your partner, how you may need some extra support around the home. And then it's okay to ask for help, right? It's okay to delegate tasks in the household. And then also making sure you celebrate your wins, right? It's not everything that has been so challenging right now. So celebrating the wins and those positive aspects of maybe being in the home with your children and being able to raise them and see them, growing up. I've been very fortunate to, take care of my, my 10-month-old and really seeing her, grow up and, learning different things and just exploring her world versus maybe if, the world was open back up and she was in daycare, I'm not able to see her as much. We're only able to see each other after work. And then, you come home, you sleep, you go, you get up and do it all over again. So I really try to see the positives in what we're dealing with right now. All right, so we wanted to check in after everything that we've discussed in terms of how you were feeling after the workshop. So are you, was the information useful? Are you still feeling like you're taking it day by day or hanging in there? Or, how has the information been, helpful to you? So please feel free to share in the chat. All right. Karen, are there any responses in the chat?
Absolutely. Aw. Numerically, I don't see any 4s right this moment, but one of our attendees mentioned, I feel extremely understood and more empowered, which is not even a number. It's better than a number. It's a phrase.
Yes, definitely. Yeah, I mean, that's really the goal, right? Is to help us normalize our feelings and then also, find ways to empower ourselves during this time as parents and caregivers. Okay. All right, so I wanted to share some resources real quickly before we end, which is the 24-hour Colorado Crisis Support Line. It's a free, confidential, professional, and immediate support for any mental health, substance abuse, or emotional crisis that you are dealing with. So please feel free to utilize this or also share it with your network. And then also the My Strengths app. So this is a web and mobile-based app that offers personalized learning modules and interactive activities to support your overall well-being and resilience, right? So it's free. The account is free up until June 2021. So I would really encourage you to download this app. They provide practical strategies for managing parenting, relationship stress, grief and loss, sleep challenges. If you want to use your phone to scan the QR code, you're more than welcome to do that. I'll stay on the screen for maybe a minute. Remember, it's free until June 2021. After that, it's definitely at a cost. So utilize it while you can. And I believe that once you sign up for it before June, it's free to you indefinitely. So definitely sign up. All right. So if you have any questions or concerns, please feel free to contact me at the email address or the number below. And I am ready to take any questions that you all may have.
We do have a question, Jill, that I think is very interesting. What do you think about those of us single parents who can only delegate to our kids, but the kids won't help out? Any strategies for more productive ways of asking our kids to help out?
Okay, well, I mean, I think it's important to help children help them understand ways to show, empathy, right? I think helping your children to put maybe, how do I want to say this? Really helping our children understand, ways to use empathy, right? So if they're not willing to take on some of the household tasks, as a parent, as a single parent, maybe you can sit down with your children and really help them understand maybe the stress that, you're dealing with in terms of having to manage all the household tasks. I think it's really important to, teach our children, ways to show empathy early on. And that is definitely one of the ways, is helping them be able to put themselves, maybe in your shoes as a parent, and understanding, the stress and the complexities that you're dealing with. And then, really talking with your children and understanding what can you take on, right? So maybe, vacuuming the whole house, you feel like it's such an insurmountable task as a child. So maybe as a parent, really helping your children figure out what they feel, what it is that they feel like they are capable of doing. Maybe, that can also really get to using that strengths-based perspective, right? So what do you feel like you're capable of doing to help out, mom or dad in the household, and really giving children that, ownership or that empowerment piece to, make a decision like, mom, I can help you out with so-and-so. So I think maybe that's something that, you can try to do, is really helping children, maybe decide what their strengths are, and, maybe what their weaknesses or challenges are, and, how you all can come up with, a creative way to, help out in the home. So I hope I was able to get that out.
Absolutely. And just if we have time for one more question, I know that a lot of families are struggling with intergenerational households for doing their work, but also for parenting. What suggestions would you have for different parenting styles?
Yes, and I think this really touches on a cultural piece, right? So for instance, I guess it will all really determine on the cultural piece and how, Karen, can you please repeat that question again?
Yes, it's just, Jill, it's living in an intergenerational household. Often for parenting, you're going to have different skills. So as an example, dad and granddad may parent totally different because maybe dad has gone through some incredible training, and that education and experience necessarily has not been transferred to granddad.
Exactly. And I think really learning to, maybe utilize, certain techniques in terms of maybe using some intergenerational skills or techniques. So maybe helping your children, like, work with, mom and grandma to, cook, in the kitchen, or, dad and grandpa, maybe working with, their sons to, build things. I think really just finding ways to maybe help each other. I don't know, finding ways to help each other out in the household, I would say. So not just really, I think I talked about the stereotypical, like, gender norms or gender roles in the home, and how we can really step away from that, by, maybe, the child, a female child maybe working with, grandpa, or, teaching your sons to help you out with, folding laundry, or like doing dishes. I think that definitely all helps out in like intergenerational and multi-generational households. So really stepping away from, maybe some of like those gender roles, and really helping to utilize like everyone's skills, I would say.
And Jill?
Yes.
I do not see any more questions at this time.
Okay. All right. I think we have like a couple more minutes. So I guess we'll give like 5 more minutes to see if anything else comes in the chat. And then I think we'll, wrap things up. But thank you all so much for taking the time to join my workshop. I hope that you were really able to get some positive things out of it, and practical things that you can utilize in your day-to-day, and just really learning to learn to just take a step back and learn to breathe, right? I think it's it's very common for us to just go throughout our day really not learning how to like breathe properly, right? So take some time, take a step back, and take like a couple of seconds to just breathe when you're feeling stressed out, or just importance of having self-care and taking time out for yourself. That's really what I want everyone to take from this. Not be too hard on yourself, but just take it, day by day. And then happy Black History Month.
Jill, I want to say how much I appreciate you. Raising children during a pandemic is uncharted territory for everyone. And so you spending time to shed some light on helpful tips and hints, setting boundaries, celebrating, giving love, connecting with your children's teachers, reaching out, finding those supports. And then also that self-care piece is really important. So I want to say thank you on behalf of the Center for African American Health, but also want to encourage folks, as you mentioned, to reach out in the chat or to send questions, as we'll be forwarding those to all of our presenters once the summit comes to a close. So thank you all so very much for joining us.
Paula, I was wondering really quickly, Karen, I see someone has a raised hand.
Oh,
that was brought to my attention, and I'm not sure where it is. Thank you, Chris.
Okay.
Chris, how do we handle that for a raised hand?
Yes, and I see Lugia, I can unmute you, or you can add your chat in a question to the chat. I'll just unmute you, allow you to talk if you want to share your question. So you are unmuted if you want to ask a question, Lugia A. And if the hand raising was an accident, no problem.
She says I'm okay.
Oh, perfect.
Thank you.
Okay, well, sounds good. Never mind.
All right. Thank you all so much.
Jill, thank you again. And I'll encourage folks to take a quick break as they prepare to join the next session at 7:35.
Wonderful. Thank you all.
Have a wonderful weekend.
Too.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Be well.